This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Good morning, sir.
It is, isn't it? It's certainly a sunny day, but windy. But I don't see any clouds, so that's a good thing. We're not getting there.
Waiting for summer to kick in here. So
yeah, it hasn't been overly warm, but yeah, I think our highest was last week, and it was like 22 degrees, which is smoking for up here. But yeah, it's they say that mid-June is the weather you should be looking at for the rest of your summer to kind of dictate the fire season. So don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because, well, we all know fire helps on the landscape, but when it takes off and runs and affects infrastructure, it's a bad thing. So we'll see what happens, because I know they're calling for July to be screaming hot, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. So this is episode 79, TJ Schwanky. TJ's really, really done well in the sheep world. He's somebody that I've always looked up to. He's always got the right message when it comes to wild sheep, about harvesting sheep, about supporting conservation organizations, about putting sheep on the mountain. So somebody I respect highly, and on this podcast, TJ does not disappoint.
Yeah, and he's also got the longest running hunting show on TV. I think it's 23, 24 years now. Outdoor Quest. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
That's a hell of a run, and he's still doing well. I know he and Vanessa just came back from Africa. Oh God, a couple weeks ago, and he's already wanting to go back. So, awesome. And since he came back from Africa, he did a cougar hunt and a bear hunt on the island. So busy man in the hunting world.
Yeah, very cool. So just some housekeeping on our end. Our raffles are still going. Go to our homepage, wildsheepsociety.com. There's 3 cool raffles right now. The Corlane's rifle raffle, there's only about 2 weeks left on that, something like that. So if you're going to get a ticket, pick it up. That RMR rifle is stunning. So don't wait around there. This past weekend, we had our 2 events go on. We had it at Crowsberry Farms in Langley. We had an event there. Was a great time. We had Dr. Helen Swansa. We had Renee Thornton. We had the new film transmission showing, so that was fantastic. And then we were up in Kamloops on the Saturday for our Mountain Mentorship event. So great event. Great to see some friendly faces out there, people we haven't seen for a couple of years. And it was great. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, got to do another one of those up here. We had a great time at Trench Brewing with the Premier Transmission. So need more of those up in the north. You guys down there, well, always get the fun events, right? And yeah, got the Jurassic coming up too, and that'll be 2 months. Just under 2 months. The second week of August, 11th and 12th in Chilliwack. It's gonna be a great event, and then we've set our dates. So mark it in your calendars. Our Northern fundraiser is going to be February 4th at the Encana in Dawson Creek again. And then we're going to hold our Kamloops Convention and AGM, obviously in Kamloops. And that's going to be on March 10th and 11th. So we got a lot of great stuff in store. Finally able to plan these in-person events. And we're really stoked to get everyone back together. And, with all this angst of not being together for 2 years, once tickets go on sale, and we're months away from that, but once they do, don't wait around. Our Northern fundraiser was selling out in 24 hours in the past, and I see no reason why that's not going to happen again this year with all the anxiousness and excitement of getting everyone together. So yeah, federal mandates have been lifted as of the other day, and it's going to be spicy. We'll say everybody finally gets together and gets a little bit of the angst off, shakes the rust out, and there's going to be a lot of fun stories, and I'm sure a lot of drinks hoisted. So those will go fast. Those will go fast. As you said, 24 hours for the Northern. I don't expect it to be any different for Kamloops, right? It'll be almost 3 years, right? For people to get back together by the time it rolls around, because it was canceled in 2020, the day before. Right. It's just wind out of the sails, and it's going to be a good time. And 10 months out and already starting to get ramped up. So be fun.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. So with that, we're off to episode 79, and we're going to enjoy the company for the next hour of TJ Schwanky, and enjoy.
Across Canada and throughout the world, if you come across a campfire in the woods, on a mountaintop, or next to a river, you'll find warm company and friendly people gathered around. Regardless of your lifestyle or place you call home, we invite you to learn more about what it means to be a hunter in the modern era. If you love the outdoors, care about where your food comes from, and are concerned for the future of wildlife and the environments that they need to survive, pull up a seat. We have a story to tell. Welcome to our campfire.
Good morning, TJ. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for coming on, and always enjoy listening to all you have to say and reading your articles. And so we're well overdue. So really excited to talk to. So much to talk about. So I guess let's start with, you got any plans for the fall to hunt any sheep, or what are you doing there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the great things, I guess, about living in Alberta is we can still get a general over-the-counter tag, which apparently are becoming more rare in Canada, as we just saw in BC lately. But I'm pretty blessed. I live, 45-minute drive. I can be putting on a backpack and going sheep hunting, and some good quality sheep hunting still. So, I'm kind of getting a little long in the tooth. So we ended up getting a couple horses here the last couple of years too. So hopefully that'll help us get into the backcountry a little bit easier.
Right on. So has that changed your hunting a lot? I've actually never had the opportunity to hunt off horse. Well, I've had the opportunity. I've just never done it to hunt off horseback. So has that evolved for you as a hunter in the way you approach things when you're out in the field and sheep hunting with horses?
Well, it's funny. I used to do a lot of sheep hunting on horseback 20 years ago, and then just kind of got out of it and kind of got really serious about the backpack hunting. And one of the great things about where we live is, I mean, you can day hunt sheep where we live. I mean, it's, if you can hike in 3 hours, you're in some of the best sheep country there is. So horses can be a pain in the butt. There's no question about it. I mean, they're great for getting you there and getting you out, but what those horses do when you're actually hunting, somebody's got to look after them or they decide to run home. So I'd rather not have them there, but it does definitely allow you to get a lot further back. And, Alberta doesn't have the big wilderness areas like British Columbia does where you can ride for 3 or 4 days. We're pretty limited. The Wilmore would be our one spot. And I have trailed horses in there quite a few times, but for the most part, the guy with a backpack can hunt Alberta pretty effectively. It's just the older you get, the more comforts you look for, I guess.
Yeah, well said.
You look for people to open your gates too, right?
No, exactly.
Poor Vanessa.
Cool. So TJ, like you said, you've done this for a while now, and I think it's been a couple of years back now. You've managed to complete your F.N.A.W.S, and for those listening, that's 4 North American wild sheep. So getting all 4 species ticked off your list, which is a huge achievement. So, maybe let's just go back to the very beginning and talk about, where did your interest for sheep hunting come from, and how did you sort of get the sheep itch or the sheep bug?
Well, I mean, it is kind of funny. I mean, probably my first exposure to any sheep hunting was in the pages of Outdoor Life and Field and Stream. And I credit Jack O'Connor, as cliche as that sounds, for fostering that love of sheep in me. I'd never really probably seen a bighorn sheep till I was in my 20s. Came out to Alberta on a vacation and saw 3 rams in the side of the ditch. And I mean, in my mind, they were all massive full curl rams, and, they likely were 3 or 4-year-old rams standing in the ditch. But in my mind, that's the day that I knew I wanted to become a sheep hunter. And kind of went back home. I was from Manitoba at the time, went back, kind of made some arrangements and decided I was going to move to Alberta and be a sheep hunter. And that was 1986. And that was the very first year that I've ever had a sheep tag in my pocket. And it was 1988 when I actually killed my first ram in Alberta. And it did happen to be a really nice full curl ram, but that was probably more good luck than good management.
Right on. So, are you able to dive into some of these stories? I'd like to kind of hear the journey on which rams, when, how, and I know some of our listeners are wanting more sheep hunting stories. So,
no,
let's start from the beginning and let's get into some of the meat and potatoes and some of the challenges, and then and I guess one of the things I've seen from your stuff online, TJ, is you're such a humble guy, and you talk, I'm just an ordinary guy that got his F.N.A.W.S. So I'd like to hear how, a young aspiring 21-year-old that wants to get into sheep hunting that looks at all 4 species and does the math on it and goes, holy shit. So, let's talk about, that process, how you got those rams, where you hunted, and some of the highlights and maybe some of the downsides of the stories too, because I'm sure there's been a few times where you came out of the bush and went, oh my goodness.
Well, and true enough. And I think the biggest thing to any, young sheep hunters nowadays is don't be in a hurry. It's not going to happen overnight for most people. I do know some young guys who've done it, probably in 2 or 3 years. I know one guy that's done it in a year, and I think their houses probably have the biggest mortgages and the truck has the biggest mortgages, and whatever they decide to do financially is up to them. But my F.N.A.W.S took me 32 years from the time I killed my first ram till I killed my last one, and it was never a plan. I mean, I just fell in love with sheep hunting, and my first sheep hunt in Alberta, where I killed my first ram in 1988, was probably the most gruesome backpack hunt I have ever been on in my life. We ended up, and a lot of it was just total inexperience and poor gear and everything else. But we spotted 2 rams the day before the season opened, and figured, wow, we better get up and sleep on that mountain just underneath them in case there's some other hunters come up this valley or something. And we went up there, and at about it was about 7 or 8 o'clock at night, it started to pour rain, and probably one of the most intense thunder and lightning storms I've ever been in. You could see the lightning striking in the valley below us, and so sometime in the night, that rain turned into snow, and I was sleeping in a garbage bag, and I had a yellow rain suit on. That was the extent of my quality mountain gear at that time. And woke up in the morning, and I had 18 inches of snow on top of me. I had frostbite on my feet. And of course, the sheep were nowhere on the mountain. They'd gone down to the low country where any reasonable person would have gone. But we went back down, kind of licked our wounds for a day or two, had a little run-in with a grizzly bear, and 3 days later, we saw those same 2 rams again, and I was pretty fortunate enough to take that ram, and came out of that hunt. We had poor backpacks, we had big, heavy fleece gear on it. I remember it all today. It was like as poorly equipped as you could be, but we thought we were, pretty serious sheep hunters at that time, and came out to the truck, and I don't know, my pack was whatever it was, 120, 140 pounds at that time. And I was hurting. I was frostbite feet. And all I could think about is, when can I do this again? And I think it was that day I knew I was going to be a sheep hunter forever. And I kind of look at people. I've taken a lot of people sheep hunting for their first time. And you can kind of tell after that first experience whether it's going to be a lifelong addiction or once was enough. And for me, it did turn into an addiction. And I hunted bighorns a lot in Alberta in those subsequent years. And I did manage to take 2 more bighorn over the course of probably about the next 25 years kind of thing. Passed up a ton of legal rams over the years. I think I've been on 19 or 20 bighorn kills with friends. So it just became all consuming. I mean, I missed a lot of good bird hunting. I missed a lot of good archery hunting because my total September and October were 100% dedicated to hunting sheep. And really from probably May until the end of October, that's all we did was climb mountains and look for sheep. And, probably like a lot of you guys do, I get a lot of emails and questions on social media, where should I go hunt? Where should I go hunt sheep? And man, if you only knew the amount of time that sheep hunters put into finding good spots, and what, you're kind of like asking for the key to their safety deposit box. And, I don't mind giving guys broad, areas to go check out, but if you're not willing to put the time and the boot leather into going and checking out, learning an area, you probably shouldn't be in those mountain sheep hunting. If you want to go do it easily, that's not what sheep hunting's all about. So I had an opportunity to go film a stone sheep hunt up on the Jennings River, and I jumped at it. And sheep hunting for me has never been about collecting sheep. It's never been about ticking, the 4 species off a list or anything else. It's been about experiencing hunting those sheep and, hunting where they live. And that's the great thing about a North American sheep is they all live in such unique habitats. So I got a chance to go along on this hunt up in the Jennings River, and it turned out to be a month-long hunt. And, we trailed, I think we had 25 or 27 horses, and it was a pretty involved hunt. And long story short, we ended up taking a 40-inch ram on that trip. And it was probably the most magnificent ram I'd ever seen in my life. And I knew then that I had to hunt stone sheep myself. And the opportunity came 2 years later. Darwin Watson had a cancellation just kind of last minute and phoned me up and he says, listen, I've got this cancellation hunt. And he says, I need $5,000 for this hunt. And if anybody knows what stone sheep hunts cost nowadays, they'll be shocked at that. But I mean, this was in the mid 90s kind of thing. And there was a ton of money for me. And I said, Darwin, I really appreciate the opportunity, but I just can't afford that. So kind of thought about it for the night and went back the next day. And I said, I'm going to call Darwin back. So I called Darwin and I said, I think I can do this, Darwin. When do I need to be there? He goes, tonight. So jumped in the truck and drove up to Hudson Hope. And so we had a 14-day stone sheep hunt booked. And this was it was late September, early October. So it was getting pretty late for hunting sheep deep in the mountains. And ended up getting paired up with a fellow by the name of Gary Dowd, which was one of Darwin's longtime guides and probably one of the best horsemen I think I've ever hunted with. And I think Gary guided, 50 stone sheep at that point in his career. So we spent what was supposed to be 2 weeks in the mountains, and Gary taught me so much about packing horses and sheep hunting. And I just kind of looked at it as an education. We didn't have a wrangler. We didn't have anything. It was just Gary and I, and we took off into the mountains. And it was on day 18 of my 14-day hunt that I finally killed a stone sheep ram. And most of it was weather. We had rain and snow. And when we finally came out of the mountains with the stone sheep, the horses were going through, the snow was chest deep on them. We were walking, we just about lost horses over cliffs. We were fording flooded rivers, and it was kind of everything a sheep hunt should be. And so that was I had my stone sheep. My sheep hunting career was as good as it could get at that point. I had no really thoughts about going on to do more hunts. And I guess just over the course of the years, I managed to get invited along on a couple Dall sheep hunts to film those and things like that. And then in 2010, Harold Grindy from Gana River Outfitters called me up, and he had a last minute cancellation on a Dall sheep hunt. And it was a good deal. It really was. And even, we look now, it's sheep hunts are so in demand right now. If you wanted to book a Dall sheep hunt today, you'd probably be waiting 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years to get a Dall sheep hunt nowadays. And the prices have gone through the roof. Just 10 years ago, those guys were still struggling to sell their hunts. And, there were some good deals around. So Harold called me up, and it was a good deal on a Dall sheep hunt. I was turning 50 that year. I figured, boy, that's a heck of a 50th birthday present. So booked a Dall sheep hunt with Harold, and we hunted right up on the northern end of his territory on the Gana River itself. And it's some rugged country up there. It's not your typical Mackenzie Mountains with the nice rounded tops on them. And had a young guide, Trevor Schulist from British Columbia. And Trevor was everything you don't want at a guide. He was probably about 6'6", and most of that was legs. And he was young with lungs and everything else. And here I was a 50-year-old fat guy trying to keep up to him. But we ended up putting on about 100 kilometers loaded on that trip. I think we moved 3 times. And I ended up taking just a beautiful 14-year-old ram on the second last day of the hunt. And on the way out, Trevor's actually blew his back out. And it was pretty serious. So I think I ended up carrying probably 140 or 50 pounds out for the last half of that, where we could get down to. So I felt pretty good about that, being the age I was, and managed to, it was a hard backpack hunt. It really was. So once again, I was happy. My sheep hunting career was as good as it could get. And I did manage to do some international hunting in there. And, I hunted Tur in Azerbaijan. I hunted Marco Polo in Kyrgyzstan. And these were all pretty reasonable hunts again at that time. And they're hunts that haven't gone up a lot in price, I guess, in comparison to North American hunts. So during this whole time, I had it in my mind that I really needed to go on a desert sheep hunt. So I had a few buddies who were going to go, and I was going to go, and it was in my mind. And unless I drew a tag in one of the Western states, there was no way that I would ever go on a desert sheep hunt. I heard too many disasters about Mexico, and I just really didn't want to get involved in a Mexican hunt. And then in 2019, a good buddy of mine, Jeff Eno, went on a hunt in Sonora. I took probably one of the most beautiful desert sheep rams I'd ever seen in my life. And Jeff's a guy that I trust, and we share a lot of the same hunting values and things like that. So I got a hold of Jeff and said, tell me the story about this hunt. And everything he told me was what I wanted to hear about a desert sheep hunt. I mean, it was 100% true free range. They weren't out spotting these rams in advance or anything else. You hunted hard. And so I got a hold of Rob Brown from Timber King Outfitting and kind of, talked about it. And I'm not sure why, but after that conversation, I'd committed to going on a hunt in 2020 with Rob in Sonora. So Vanessa and I went down. So this was there was some talk of a virus or something going on in the world at this time, but nobody really knew what it was. It was over in Europe. Nobody was too worried about it. So we went to Mexico and had a great hunt. I took just an absolutely magnificent ram. The first ram they'd taken off the Surrey reservation that had scored actually over 180 inches. It was a 182-inch ram, 9-year-old ram, just everything you could want. And it was a great hunt. And the cool thing was I actually took it on February 29th. So it was a leap year. So it was my leap year ram, and finished my F.N.A.W.S, but it was weird. And I mean, I don't think I could have been with a better guy than Rob at the time, because, it wasn't about completing a F.N.A.W.S. It wasn't about collecting 4 sheep or anything else. It was just about experiencing where all 4 of those rams lived and hunting in those areas. And I was pretty lost for words. And Rob said, he says, you just looked at me and he says, you never thought you'd be here, did you? And it was just, that encompassed everything about that hunt. I never thought I would be there. And so, yeah, I guess so, as they say, the rest is history. 32 years later, I managed to complete a F.N.A.W.S. I didn't even register my F.N.A.W.S for a year and a half after that. I just, I don't know. I didn't know that. I mean, getting recognized for taking a F.N.A.W.S wasn't really that important to me. But on the other hand, I thought it was really important to recognize the sheep and, the wild areas that those sheep call home. And I know how much pleasure I get looking at other people's pictures and things like that. So I did. And, I'm really happy I did, but it still does seem a little bit surreal, I guess.
So when you look back and you register all 4 of your sheep, is there one that stands out like as, monumental? Is it kind of that last one, the fact that you achieved that, or was there one hunt? Yeah, I guess probably talking about the experiences, it's probably one of the experiences. Is there one that stands out for you the most?
You know what? There isn't. And I think they were all just so unique. So special, and came at a time in my life that was perfect for each one of those hunts. So no, every one of those sheep, when I look at them on the wall, they all kind of mean equal to me. And not one of the hunts really stands out. They were all phenomenal hunts. They're all great rams. And, I kind of appreciate them all equally, which I know does sound weird. And I think a lot of people, they'll ask you, what was the favorite hunt you've ever been on? And I can't answer that question either. I mean, I think my favorite hunt's probably the next one. So maybe my favorite sheep will be the next one.
That's cool. So when when people ask you about this, and, we've seen this, and I know you've written an article on this about, this whole new fad about social media and, how sheep hunting's sexy, and, people are getting into it for the wrong reasons in certain cases. How do we sort of, I guess, where's the disconnect? Where did that all start? Where, you took 32 years to get rams. You've spent, years and years passing rams over, and then people are going out in the field and they feel, no, I'm entitled to these rams. And then because they're putting all this pressure, they end up killing these young rams that are illegal in some cases, many cases, as we know now. How do we change that narrative, and what do we do? Obviously we have a bit of a problem here, based on what we've seen this past year and for a few years now. So how do we change that narrative?
Well, I think that is the $1 million question. And I mean, if people don't believe that social media is a problem, I mean, the BC government identified social media as one of the reasons they put the Kootenays on draw. So I don't know. I really don't know what to say on that. I think, it was probably easier in my time. There was a lot less pressure. There was a lot less investment and everything else. So there really was never any pressure to to produce. And I think I don't want to single out anyone, and I know I probably caught a lot of flack for singling out the flat brims when I was in my article, and it was definitely done in jest. It wasn't aimed at a specific group for sure, but we've kind of created this whole brand influencers and everything else nowadays. So there's a lot of pressure on them to produce. And, with pressure comes bad decisions. And I mean, we're seeing bad decisions from hunters. We're seeing bad decisions from guides. We're seeing bad decisions from outfitters. Stone sheep hunts are going to be $70,000 this year. There's a lot of pressure. Like when I went on my $5,000 stone sheep hunt, it was a lot of money, but it wasn't, kind of a house down payment or anything. So somehow we got to get that pressure to produce off. And I don't see how that's going to happen. I mean, the demand for North American sheep is absolutely through the roof. And, and I think groups like even Wild Sheep and GSCO and everything else have put so much spotlight on sheep, which is good. I mean, it's not a bad thing that they've done that, but it's also put a lot of spotlight on sheep. And, they become that one keystone species in North America that seems to define people as hunters. And, I remember back when I first started sheep hunting, I mean, whitetail hunters had way more profile than sheep hunters. Sheep hunters were kind of this offshoot group that were, kind of crazy people that, went in the mountains and hunted, but there was no real profile with it. But now, like if you want to be a number one Instagram hunter or something like that, you better have taken a sheep or two. So I wish I had the answer to it. I mean, I think we all know what the problem is. There's just a lot of pressure to produce for everybody right now. And with that pressure, I think there is a lot of bad decisions being made.
Yeah, it's interesting, but really, how does that change from, is it that much more money? Gear is still gear. Guys still go out there without anything. And, how are you different than a new guy starting out today? I think the mentorship piece is part of it, right? Like there's, people going out in the field with that. Every time I've sheep hunted, I've always been with somebody that's been doing it for years. I'm just wondering, really, is there that? Yeah, I agree with you. There's more pressure. There's no doubt about it. I just don't quite understand how. Is it because there's more sheep hunters that their mistakes are being made, or just interesting to see it's such a big issue this past year, right?
Yeah, then I guess when I was in my 20s, it was pretty easy to walk away from a ram because there was really no pressure to kill it. Like I wasn't an influencer on Instagram. I hadn't paid a down payment on a house for the sheep hunter. So in those ways, I guess it was easier. But maybe the mentorship is a big part of it too. And, we definitely have a lot of new young sheep hunters just going straight into the game without being mentored in. And I guess I did that too back then, but I know, I've mentored a lot of sheep hunters and I've been on a lot of sheep kills in my lifetime, but boy, we've walked away from a lot of legal sheep too with young sheep hunters. And I think that was a good lesson. And I mean, if I ever went with a sheep hunter who I didn't know well, or was just starting out, I mean, it was always like, like we're not going to kill young rams. So we're not going to kill anything that's close to questionable. And I don't know, you hear sheep hunters talk nowadays and it's almost become like a badge of honor on how close you can call a sheep and things like that. Like I've heard guys in Alberta talking about, well, it doesn't look legal, but there's always that 16th or quarter of an inch of horn under the hair that'll make sure it's legal. And I'm just like, oh my God, like how did we get to that point? That ram isn't obviously legal and isn't obviously mature. I don't know. We as hunters, I think maybe we just need to look a little deeper inside ourselves as hunters. And, why are we really doing this? Is it to be popular on Instagram? Is it to get a check from a rifle company, or is it to hunt sheep? And at some point we need to get back to the fact that this is still all about just hunting sheep and having the privilege of hunting where they live. And, you guys in BC are you're losing that privilege fast. And I think that should be a real eye opener for what can happen, when there is this kind of abuse of the resource. And, when you have that many short and young sheep being shot, I mean, that is an abuse of the resource and there's consequences to that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting, with sheep, we talk about the 16th or 32 of an inch or whatever the case may be that you just referenced there. You'd never do that on a freaking whitetail or a moose. You know, if you know, it's like, oh, the tine has to be 2 inches or whatever. I don't know, pick a number. You wouldn't go, oh, it's 2 1/4, or that, you know, that tine needs to be that 1 inch and we're an inch and an eighth. You wouldn't even, you just be like, no, it's like, you just, okay, we'll wait for another one. But I guess maybe being such a challenging species to harvest, and, you know, I guess you look at it, 300-400 rams are shot a year in British Columbia. And if you got 2,000-4,000 hunters, your odds of success are pretty low. But, you know, I always went in the field knowing that, you know, what do they say? You know, the year you start hunting is the year your ram was born that you're going to harvest, right? So, you know, we do know that it's difficult. You always had that mindset. And you just, if you've seen one, you're just freaking, that was the big thing, is if you've seen a legal ram or seen rams, you're happy. If you've seen a legal one, you're ecstatic. And if you got any chance to kill one, it was just, that was the success of the trip right there, right?
Yeah, and I think, you know, I don't know, that there doesn't seem to be that, you know, pride in walking away from legal rams anymore. The pride seems to come from killing them. And I was actually following an interesting thread on Facebook the other day, and it was, you know, I think it was who's North America's best sheep hunter, and somebody commented that the best sheep hunter in North America was the guy that had walked away from the most rams. And boy, that really struck a chord with me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, it's not the guy who's killed the most; it's the guy who's walked away from the most. And I guess I'd like to say, like, I mean, I'm pretty proud of the rams I've killed, but I'm pretty proud of the fact that, you know, I don't know how many rams I've walked away from, but I probably in my lifetime walked away from 100 legal rams.
Yeah, it's very cool. You know, it's interesting. I was talking with Trevor Carruthers on this when all this stuff went down, and, you know, there's this Wild Sheep Foundation has this program where take one, put one back. And Trev said, we need to start some narrative where it's like left one on the mountain or something like that, where you walked away from it, right? You know, some narrative where guys realize and gals, people realize that the right thing to do is to walk away from these rams. And just because sometimes just because it's legal doesn't make it makes sense to harvest it anyway, right? There's certain cases where it's like, yeah, it is a legal ram, but, you know, best just to leave that one on the mountain.
Yeah, I mean, I had a really good sheep hunting buddy for quite a few years, Darren Thompson, and you know, I was probably with Darren on, I don't know, 8 or 10 legal rams, and it took him 15 years to kill his first bighorn. And, you know, he was just we actually walked away from some rams that, you know, probably were, you know, could have been killed, but he just had it in his mind that when he took his bighorn, you know, it was going to be a certain ram. And when he did take his bighorn, it was a certain ram. So I have a lot of, you know, respect for guys like that, especially, you know, new sheep hunters, younger sheep hunters who do have that kind of patience and just, you know, don't have that bloodlust to kill that first ram. And, you know, that's, I guess, what we need to be teaching to our younger hunters and our newer hunters nowadays, is that, you know, there is a lot of pride in walking away from a legal ram.
Okay, TJ, you just got deemed the guy to change the narrative here. So we're going to need an article from you for our Wild Sheep magazine on that. And really, we do need to create that, you know, that environment where people understand that, yeah, it's okay to walk away from rams, and certainly a squeaker, there's no question, but even a legal ram, you don't need to kill every ram on the mountain. And in fact, it's, you know, that's one of the things that Bill Jex has cited with the Kootenays, is that every year, every legal ram's getting harvested, and that's a problem. You can't have every legal ram shot every year in a region, right? So, you know, people have to learn to walk away from rams that are just squeakers. It's something we're concerned about, right? So,
and we're seeing the same thing in Alberta right now too. I mean, you know, we still have a general season, but, you know, there's a lot of pressure to take that away from us too. I mean, it's easier for managers, and like you say, when there's 4 and 5-year-old rams being killed, you know, is that, I guess, what sheep hunting is all about. I mean, I guess we're still making the argument here that, you know, sheep populations are doing well, but you're right. I mean, we can only harvest so many rams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, you know, somebody that's an aspiring sheep hunter. You know, sort of, you know, if you were to impart some wisdom on a person, they come to you and say, TJ, I want to go sheep hunting. You know, don't have a ton of money. They're just an average working dude or gal that wants to get out there, wants to see sheep. You know, what advice would you give someone like that? You know, how do they get involved? How do they get started? Where do they go? How do they learn about it? What would you suggest, based on what you've seen?
I mean, obviously, if you can find some experienced sheep hunters to go with, it's you're going to learn a lot in a short amount of time. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case, but that really doesn't mean you can't become a sheep hunter. I mean, I guess my standard advice to somebody is pick an area that is a good sheep area. Pick an area that's relatively close to home and go spend as much time as you can possibly spend in that area, right from May until, end of sheep season kind of thing. And just keep learning the trails, keep track of where you're seeing sheep at different times of the year, keep track of where you're seeing sheep, when there's a storm comes in, things like that. And I mean, I think learning, and Geist wrote a great book on, the behavior of wild sheep. And I think most people kind of overlook that book because it's not about hunting. And that was probably one of my Bibles for sheep books. And I can't even remember the actual name of that book, but it was it's basically a scientific book on the behavior of wild sheep. And once you start to understand sheep behavior and how they react to different stimuli and pressure and things like that, all of a sudden you start to get ahead of the sheep rather than always being behind them. And I think that's probably been a lot of my success. I mean, where I hunt opening week is nowhere near where I hunt last week of the season. And, we're hunting a lot of sheep that are in and out of parks where I am. So, kind of what causes them to move, how do they move? And there's no way you can find that out other than just spending time out there. And to be the best sheep hunter there is just putting in more and more time. Sheep hunting, still is about 90% luck. And, if you're out in the field, your chance of getting lucky are a lot better than if you're not in the field. And so that's what I tell people is just keep hitting those high percentage spots that should hold sheep. You don't need to spend a ton of money on gear or anything else. I mean, it doesn't make you a better sheep hunter. I mean, certainly good gear allows you to stay in the field longer. It allows you to travel a little lighter and everything else. But, I'm kind of living proof that, like a semi-fat guy with not the greatest gear can, do pretty good as a sheep hunter. It's, I don't know. People just, I don't think take the time to really learn about their quarry nowadays.
Yeah, interesting. You also talk about just the time and being close to home, and it's time in the field. And I've had guys come to me and say, "Well, I got a week holiday. That should be enough, right?" And it's like, well, if you're doing these northern hunts for stone sheep, and you live in anywhere in the lower half of the province, you're a day up and a day back, and then you got to get in and get out. So that's almost a day. So if you literally have 3 days to hunt and 3 days to harvest the sheep and then I guess that's where guys end up putting pressure on themselves and killing something that they shouldn't have because they just didn't have the time to do it. And you said it best there. You were on day 18 of your 14-day hunt. That to me, that's telltale right there, right?
Yeah, and I mean, some of the really successful stone sheep hunters in BC that I know are guys that have gone to the same area for the last 10 years. And probably the first 3 or 4 years were just expensive learning experiences. I mean, they had to pay flights in and everything else, but they stuck with it. They found an area, they stuck with it, they learned it. And after about year 4 or 5, they really started to figure those sheep out where they were. And that's when they became successful. To think you can just jump in a plane, fly into a lake and climb up a mountain and kill a sheep, I mean, it does happen. But if you want to be truly successful and truly consistent, you got to put your time in. And I think that's, I guess, one of the things I find with a lot of new sheep hunters nowadays is they don't want to invest that time. And I mean, for a guy like yourself, who's, on the island kind of thing, I mean, it's a pretty big investment to, have to get out there and do that. But if you want to be successful, there's no shortcut.
Yeah, and you even pointed it out. Your early season versus your late season spot are totally different. So if you got somebody that's going into a new area every time, and they even change the time of year. You go in August, and then all of a sudden you're going in late September. Those are different animals, right? They're starting to get in their winter range and stuff like that. So it's it certainly is something that there's no freebies there, and a lot of boot leather and time to figure that out.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I would say that late season sheep are the easiest sheep to kill, and they're the hardest sheep to kill. They're the easiest sheep to kill in the fact that they are very easy to pattern. Once you figure late season sheep out, where they move, how they react to snowstorms and things like that, if we have a snowstorm here, I can pretty much guarantee you in 3 days where I could take and show you a legal ram. the hard part about it is just surviving in there. I mean, the snow might be waist deep. You might be snowshoeing in. You might be camping in minus 20 or 30 temperatures. So, but I mean, if you want to kill big rams, especially rams that are living on the edges of, like mines in BC and parks and things like that, late season is the absolute time to do it. And the more horrendous the weather, the more your odds increase. I mean, I love going out. Like our season goes till October 31st here in Alberta. And I love going out that last week. I mean, you'll rarely see a sheep hunter. Opening week, there'll probably be 1,000 guys out there sheep hunting. And that last week, there might be 10 guys out there. And so you've got way less guys and way more sheep. But, you either got to be tough or stupid to be out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, that's where I learned, too, is you talked about that mentorship piece. And with me, I went to our local Wild Sheep BC show, right? And that's where I met sheep hunters. And that was part of the mentorship piece and a big part of the information I got, and certainly helped me. So, yeah, if you don't have a TJ, I guess you can come to, your local chapter, affiliate, or WSF banquet to meet people.
Oh, and I mean, there's so many knowledgeable sheep hunters out there, and most of the guys are willing to share to a point. But I think most guys are willing to share if you're willing to invest the time. If you just want to pick their brains so you can go kill an easy sheep to say you killed a sheep, you're probably not going to get much help. If you want to become a sheep hunter and put your time in, I was talking to when I was out on the island, I was out for a Roosevelt elk hunt last fall, and my guide was Aaron Parada, who I'm sure you know. And, he's a pretty serious sheep hunter, and, he's taking some guys out. But I mean, if you go with him, you're probably going to carry his pack and some of his gear for the first 2 or 3 years. And, you're going to have to earn a sheep. And I think that is, if you're willing to put that kind of dedication in, you're probably going to find a lot of mentors that'll work with you. But if you just want somebody to lead you up the mountain to kill a sheep, I'm not going to help you.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, good. So will you take me?
Sorry, I can say it like it is. But
will you take me sheep hunting, TJ? No, I'm just kidding. So,
well, there goes that ask.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, we talked about you don't need the greatest gear, you don't need this and that. I know you do a ton of gear articles and stuff like that. What are the really important stuff? And, we hear a lot of this stuff pretty consistently, but when you're taking someone new in the field, what are some of the things that you say, okay, you need to have these things? What's really critical?
Well, and I think we've gone lightweight stupid. We've kind of gone too far over the edge on lightweight gear. I mean, lightweight gear, don't get me wrong, is super important, because when you're packing everything on your back, the lighter that pack is, the better. But there comes a point when gear gets too light that it just can't do what you ask it to. But first and foremost, and especially like I do a lot of late season sheep hunting, so clothing is definitely high on the list. And we're at a time right now where there is so much good clothing out there that, I kind of look back, and I mean, I think my pants and jacket probably weighed about 5 or 6 pounds when I first started sheep hunting, and, probably didn't have the R value of what weighs a pound now. So definitely spend some money on, good base layers, a good insulation layer, and some good rainwear. And without that, you're not going to last. If you're not comfortable in mountains, you're not going to stay in the mountains. Obviously a good backpack. And again, backpacks have come so far in the last 15 or 20 years. They've got lighter weight, they've got more comfortable, good pair of boots, obviously. And, and I think I always kind of laugh at the boot questions on sheep hunting pages. What are the best boots for me? Well, I don't know. I have no idea what your feet are like. Everybody's feet are different. I mean, boots that are super comfortable for me might make you crippled. So unless you try out a lot of boots, I mean, you're kind of wasting your time just asking other people. I mean, sure, you can ask what other people are using, but don't think those boots are going to work for you. I'm still a big guy on having a decent sleeping bag and a tent. I know there's been a real move lately to get away from tents, going to hammocks and tarps and things like that. For the extra pound or pound and a half, whatever, if I can get in a tent and if I'm stuck in there for a day or 2 days, or I can get some gear spread out, to me, it's all about staying in the mountains. And if you're not comfortable, you're not going to stay in there. Like if you can find any excuse to get out of the mountains, when things are miserable, you'll probably get out of the mountains. But, if you're relatively comfortable in there, do it. Food is another one that's come so far. There's so many great freeze-dried food options out there nowadays, and, good calories in them, good flavor in them, which is when we first started, I mean, freeze-dried food was just horrendous. And we used to carry packaged food. It was like the freeze-dried food nowadays, but it was already hydrated. It was just like canned food, but it was in a bag, and you dropped the bag in some boiling water. But it was, for the time, it was good. But, when I think about my first sheep hunts, like, to go in for 2 or 3 days, we were like 70, 80 pounds. And, I can probably do that same hunt nowadays with 45 or 50 pounds of gear on my back. So that's made a lot of difference. And, we've replaced what we used in those times with better gear that's lighter. So when I talk about getting too light, I see guys taking sleeping bags now that at some point there's got to be insulation, and insulation makes weight. So, I mean, if you got a sleeping bag that, you think is going to keep you warm at -10, but it's not, you're going to have the most miserable time of your life out there. So be a little bit careful. I know sleeping bags I harp on those a lot because I like to sleep well, but, sleeping bags have got so small too. Like, for bigger guys, you can't even move in them. And I don't sleep well, so I want a bag with a little bit more room in it. Talk about rifles. Rifles are another thing that, we've kind of gone a little bit lightweight crazy on them. I don't shoot a super lightweight rifle well. And when we talk about super lightweights nowadays, I've seen rifles that are 4.5, 5 pounds. And I just personally don't shoot them well. And I would think a lot of guys probably don't either. But, there's a real badge of honor nowadays to say, I've got a 4.5 pound rifle. Yeah, but does it shoot? Do you shoot it well? My ideal sheep rifle, bear rifle, weighs, 5 3/4 to 6.5 pounds. I mean, it's, to me, I shoot that rifle well. It feels solid. I know when I shoot it. Scope's another thing. I'm a bit of a long range shooter, and whatever your thoughts on long range shooting, that's fair enough. But I practice a lot at long range, so I use scopes with probably a little higher magnification than most people would. I'm running a 4-14 on most of my sheep rifles. That scope's going to come in probably close to 1.5 pounds. So, I mean, it'd be pretty easy to lose 0.5 pound on that going to a fixed 6 power or something like that. But I like a scope with a good high magnification and a scope I know I can trust in the mountain. So that's what I've gone with. I'm running turrets on all my scopes now too. So, and I mean, for me, long range, we practice religiously to 800 yards. I mean, and most of my rifles are, kind of easy 600 yard rifles, but that doesn't mean the guy driving them is a 600 yard shooter. You got to practice. So a lot of sheep aren't taken at long range, but there is those odd opportunity you're going to get. My desert sheep was 618 yards. There was not a chance in the world we were going to get closer to it, no matter how many days we waited or what else we did. So it was either take that shot or not get the ram. And I felt 100% comfortable taking it. As far as rifles and calibers go, I've kind of gone away from the big magnums. I think we all kind of go through that phase where, bigger and faster is better. And, as much as it's hated and maligned nowadays, I mean, I still like that little 6.5 Creedmoor as a mountain rifle. I mean, it's a short action rifle, very low recoil, super effective out to 500 yards. So, kind of whatever works for you, but I shoot enough in a year that I've kind of come to the point where I don't really like shooting high recoil rifles anymore. When you're running a couple thousand rounds through a rifle, it can beat you up pretty bad. So I think, and maybe that comes with age too. I think maybe the older you get, and good optics, good binos and a good spotting scope. 10 power binos. I like range finding binos. I think the worst thing you can do is ever try a pair of range finding binos, because it's going to cost you, probably half the price of a new vehicle. But they're the way to go. And I run 10x44s, and they're great. And then you have to have a spotting scope. In British Columbia, Alberta, the Yukon, Northwest Territories, we have legal requirements on rams, and that can be a curl, it could be an age. And without a good quality spotting scope, There is no way you can accurately age a ram at 400 or 500 yards. Just a quick story about spotting scopes and how important they are. When Vanessa killed her bighorn, we knew it was a nice mature ram. There was no doubt about that. But Alberta had a 4/5 curl regulation on it, and we were 250 yards from this ram. And it was deep snow, and every time he went down to eat, he'd come up, and there was a little bit of snow on the tips of his rams. And he was just one of those big, loose curled rams. I mean, he ended up scoring 170 inches. He was a big ram, but he just one of those rams that didn't tip up. So, like, we spent forever and ever looking through that spotting scope until we were 100% sure that he was legal. And like I say, that was at 250 yards. So when you're trying to age rams or trying to, look at curls at 700, 800, a kilometer away kind of thing without really high quality optics, you're kind of wasting your time out there. And, unless you're only shooting rams that are, way legal, there's no way you can do that. And spotting scopes, I mean, I find most of my rams with binoculars, but you absolutely do need that spotting scope for when it comes time to judge legality, especially nowadays. I don't know how many rams were killed in BC that last year that were illegal. I heard like something like 30, and that that should never happen.
Yeah, and you talk about weight and weight savings, and I guess for newer sheep hunters out there, new sheep hunter is that you talked about you could go into the mountains or 40 or 45 or 50 pounds or something like that in your pack. Well, it's all a trade-off, right? Yeah, you can show up with a pair of 8-power binos and no spotter, and save 3 or 4 pounds on your optics, or and also as an example, if you're going on a 2-week sheep hunt in the backcountry. Your pack's going to be a hell of a lot heavier than if you're going for 5 days, because 14 days worth of food versus 5 days of food, that's at least 20 pounds worth of extra weight there. So, it's all a trade-off too, right? So not being super light isn't always the answer. And the other side of it is keeping in mind that once you get to your base camp or your spike camp, your day hunting, you don't need, you're all kind of the same weight at that point generally, right? It's not like you're carrying all this gear with you, your tent and your sleeping bag and everything like that. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm, I get the super light philosophy. I mean, it definitely allows you to move faster and further. And, now, especially in the days of the athlete sheep hunters and things like that, a lot of that's become critical. But I don't know, there still is, I think, a really good argument for being comfortable in the mountains because you'll stay there a lot longer. I mean, unless you've been snowed in for 3 or 4 days in a tent, not being able to move, you don't really appreciate how much good gear matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, that's given me lots to think about. I'm going to go and sell some of my gear now, buy some new crap. So.
What I mean, the other thing is you don't have to buy, the super expensive sheep hunting gear. I mean, there's lots of off-market clothing nowadays that's, designed for the mountains, made with the high-quality fabrics, everything else. I mean, it maybe not have the cool logo or the cool camo on it, but it doesn't mean, when I started sheep hunting, we were using basically what the yuppies were using in the mountains because it was good gear and there was no sheep hunting clothing at that time. So there's a lot of that good quality gear still out there if you look for it. And, if you really don't care about being part of the crowd, I guess. I'm not saying that the in camo and the in fashions aren't great gear. They are. I mean, they're as good a gear as it gets, but don't, I guess, be fooled into thinking you need to spend $700 on a jacket or $500 on a pair of pants, because there are some good options out there if you look around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have a gear list that you share with guys that you take out that you're mentoring? Do you kind of say, here, this is what you need, or how do you do that?
I am the most disorganized person you've ever met, Kyle. I kind of go down in my basement and throw a bunch of stuff on the floor and then every hunt's the same. It's terrible. And I mean, yeah, you're right. I should have a gear list, and no, I don't. And unfortunately, because we're shooting television pretty much all the hunts we do, so I've pretty much got another 15 pounds of gear that most people don't have. When I did my Dall sheep hunt in the Northwest Territories, my pack was 83 pounds. I had like 25 pounds of camera gear in it, or maybe 30 pounds of camera gear in it. So, so I kind of, and that's, I guess, why I'm not so hung up on, man, you need to be super lightweight, because I've never been super lightweight. And part of it, I mean, the camera gear's got so much lighter over the years too, which has really helped us. I talk about that stone sheep hunt that, I filmed back in the 90s that kind of got me going on stone sheep. We had 125 pounds of camera gear on that hunt. We had one dedicated pack horse just for the camera gear. So, I mean, that's kind of how much things have changed over the years. So, I mean, all these hunters nowadays with the super lightweight, it's the only way you can kill a sheep. It's the only way you can kill a sheep. Well, no, it isn't. I mean, there's some great advantages to it, but don't necessarily get caught up in the fact that you can't go still with a 60 or 65 pound pack and kill a sheep.
Yeah, right on. Lots more that we can talk about there, but one thing I wanted to touch base on before we kind of wrapped up was, Wild Sheep Society BC, we're a conservation organization. We're always watching what you're doing out there in Alberta, and you put a ton of time and effort on the conservation side of things. Where did that kind of come from for you? Where did your motivation to get involved so heavily in the conservation side of things come from, TJ?
And that's another good question. I don't know. It was just always been a passion I've had. I mean, and I've always been kind of a student of biology and things like that, just in an amateur way. But I've always really took an interest in the behavior of animals, and most of my hunting books are behavioral textbooks and things like that on animals. And I think the more you start to learn about an animal's habitat, requirements, and things like that, the more you start to realize how this all comes together. Like, if we want to have more sheep on the mountain, it doesn't start with reducing hunting seasons or anything else. I mean, it starts with quality habitat. And if we as hunters who are still the primary consumptive user of this wildlife, if we can't get involved and give back to that in a very constructive manner, we're not going to have hunting for that much longer. And I mean, unfortunately, with sheep especially, like a lot of the conservation work I do with other species is on private land, so it's very easy to do. The problem with sheep is they exist primarily on Crown land. And so without the government's involvement in a lot of this stuff, I mean, you just can't go do a burn on a mountain just because it'd be good for sheep. So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges. And I think that's where groups like Wild Sheep are totally so valuable, because you need that collective group of people being involved to ever get the government's attention. And I know sometimes in Alberta we look at what you guys are doing in BC as far as habitat work with envy. I mean, and I'm sure you don't feel that you have a lot of cooperation from the government some days, but compared to what we have here, it just, like, we can't even get a burn done here. Like, it's so ridiculous. But I mean, and I think that's the frustrating part, as not only as hunters, but as hunter conservationists, is we can look at that big picture and kind of go, okay, this is obvious what needs to be done, but nobody's doing it and nobody's letting us do it. And so I think part of conservation is getting out there on the ground, doing that work. But unfortunately, a bigger part of conservation these days is lobbying. And it's really frightening when we have to lobby the government to be better conservationists.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is scary, and we had a burn 2 weeks ago, and our last podcast was on this. And the hard part was not doing the burn. The money was there, the support was there, everything was there. It was trying to get the regulatory approvals for it. And I get it. There's got to be rules. We got to be smart about it. We can't just go out and burn crap for whatever reason. But the hardest part of that whole habitat restoration project was all the regulatory approvals relating to government, trying to jump through all the hoops and play the game. And some of it was pretty excessive. You'd be like, really, is this, but at the end of the day, there was a bunch of stuff we had to do. And that, our team was pretty frustrated with some of those challenges around that. Right. So.
I remember I sat on a government burn committee here for quite a few years. And I remember at one meeting, one of the biologists brought up the fact, well, we don't even really know if burns are beneficial. So, and it was kind of at that point, like, that everybody at the table kind of went, why are we wasting our times here if we haven't even agreed to the fact that burns are beneficial? And I think predator management is another, it's such a social issue right now is a problem. I mean, we all know we have way too many predators. We all know that we have too much predation, especially on sheep right now. And, it's another hard one. We've got unique problems in Alberta. We've got a lot of feral horses here, and those feral horses are starting to impact a lot of sheep winter range. So, it's just, we're trying to manage by by social values and emotions and things like that. And at some point, everybody just needs to step back and remember, like, this is pretty simple biology. It's not rocket science here. And yeah, you're going to piss off some voters, but at some point the animals have to come first. And, in a lot of ways, I think sheep are kind of that canary in a coal mine. As far as our wildlife goes, I mean, it's pretty limited amount of habitat that's available to them. I mean, you see these vast expanses of wilderness in northern BC and things, but you look at the small areas where stone sheep live, and you go in the Kootenays and you start looking at that, and there's not a lot of habitat there for them. And every time some aspen grows up, or every time a new a cougar moves in and becomes a sheep specialist, the impact on that species is it's monumental. It's not like white-tailed deer that do have a lot of habitat, or mule deer that have a lot of habitat. I mean, if you have one cougar comes in, I mean, it can be detrimental to a small population of deer or something like that. But in the big picture, it's a lot less of an impact than it is to sheep. I mean, I don't know. We really need to start, I think, protecting. I hate that word protecting, but because we don't really want to protect it, we want to enhance and improve what we're losing. And I don't know, to me, that's every sheep hunter should be involved some way, whether it's in the lobby, whether it's in the on the ground work. And if sheep hunters aren't a member of Wild Sheep, I mean, you probably shouldn't even be in the mountains.
Yeah, that is one of my pet peeves is you got one thing that you're interested in, and you're not supporting that. I don't get that. But
that's a whole other argument. My favorite is when they say, "Well, I bought a tag. I've done my part." Right? I bought my license. I did my part. So anyway, whole other conversation.
Yeah, we won't go down that rabbit hole today. But I get that's one thing we all very much agree. Not that we haven't agreed with everything on this call, but. Cool. Okay, so let's talk about what does it look like for fall plans for you? What's next on the agenda? You got some shoots going on. You got hunts. What do you got planned?
Yeah, well, we've got a crazy busy spring. We were in Spain. We hunted the 4 ibex species in Spain in April. Went to South Africa in May. And actually hunted some pretty cool mountain species there. I don't think a lot of people really think about hunts in South Africa as being mountain hunts, but we were hunting at 7,500, 8,000 feet for some very unique native mountain species there. I was just out on the island and did a black bear cougar hunt, which I had no idea you could hunt cougar in June on the island. And to hunt black bear and cougar on the same hunt is... I don't know. I've never, ever heard of anyone doing it before. So that was pretty amazing. Summer, I'm going to be doing a lot of work. I coordinate some wildlife-friendly fencing projects here in Alberta, primarily aimed at pronghorn, but we do a lot of work for elk and mule deer as well. So that's kind of take up most of my summer. And then once we get into fall, it'll be back to the mountains here, chasing bighorns. I should draw a pronghorn tag this year. We may do a mountain moose hunt, and then elk and... just all those good things that we have here, and it starts all over again. But just really looking forward to it. We're getting some just torrential rains here right now. We've been kind of in a drought in southern Alberta for the past year and a bit, so the rains are welcome. Unfortunately, the rivers are rising fast, and there's quite a few towns on flood alert. But if that doesn't happen, this rain will be we had a big flood in 2013. I don't know if everyone remembers out here in Alberta, but it was just a disastrous flood. We had, I think, 300 mils of rainfall in 24 hours in the high mountains. And it was devastating to a lot of the towns downstream, but it changed everything in the mountains. Like all our horse trails to get into sheep country, or hiking trails to get into sheep country, changed just dramatically. So again, every time you get big rains like this in the mountains, it's like, am I going to have to relearn sheep hunting again, all over again? What I've known for the last 34 years, all of a sudden really means nothing because you can't get in there anymore. So that may be one of the challenges this summer, is just getting back out on some trails and learning them again.
Yeah, right on. Interesting. Well, fingers crossed that this rain is going to help the farmers and the producers and not do too much damage to the wildlife and do any flooding. So, yeah, not great. Cool. Well, I can't thank you enough, TJ, for coming on the show. We appreciate all you do, and just love everything you stand for, man. You just have such great messaging around hunting and conservation and wildlife and mountain species, and just always appreciate you. So thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, cool. Thanks for having me. I mean, you guys are doing a great job here, and I mean, keep spreading that word. We need to, I guess, not only get more sheep on the mountain, but get more habitat on the mountain.
Yeah, some of the memes he sends me in private messages are pretty rocking too. So
yeah,
those are awesome.
Yeah, I'm banned from Facebook right now, so it's okay. So
24-hour ban last night for sharing a business post. Like, come on.
It's a brave new world, isn't it?
It is, but oh well, keep getting the message out. It's all we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, TJ. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much.